In December of 1996, 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey stood on a small stage beneath a tangle of Christmas lights, wearing a white gown and a bright red sash. It was the last pageant she would ever perform in. For years, the footage of that night was missing, absent from every collection of home videos, television interviews, and documentaries. Nearly 3 decades later, a brief clip surfaced online, not from the Ramsey family archives, but from another child's pageant recording. What it revealed was both ordinary and haunting. A handful of contestants, a modest audience, and a little girl accepting a medal and a stuffed bear dressed like Santa Claus. This fragment of lost footage reopened one of the strangest subplots in the JonBenét Ramsey case, the so-called Santa Bear mystery. The bear had been photographed on JonBenét's bed in the days following her death, positioned neatly beside her pillow. When detectives asked about it, Patsy Ramsey, JonBenét's mother, said she had never seen it before. Her uncertainty, spoken on record, triggered a nationwide search for what police briefly believed could be a vital clue. For months, headlines speculated that the bear had come from a stalker, perhaps left by someone who had watched the little girl's pageants. Television anchors repeated its description. Red and white fur, small pouch in front, Santa suit with black belt and gold buckle. If it wasn't a household toy, then perhaps it was a message or a calling card left by her killer. But the truth was far less sinister. The bear wasn't a stranger's token, it was a prize. The same bear had been handed to JonBenét at her final pageant, visible in the background of the recovered footage. The event took place on December 15th, 10 days before she was found dead. In that film, as the children stand waiting for their names to be called, a row of identical stuffed bears sits on a table beside the stage. When JonBenét's name is announced, she runs forward, accepting her medal and one of the bears. In that moment, the Santa bear stopped being evidence of an intruder and became something else entirely. A silent record of oversight, miscommunication, and memory. Investigators later learned that the footage wasn't supplied by the Ramsey family. It came from a pageant organizer named Leona Gregg, who had recorded the show for her own records. That alone raised questions. For a family so publicly devoted to JonBenét's pageant career, her costumes, her performances, her photographs, there seemed to be a conspicuous gap where this footage should have been. And while it's impossible to determine intent, that absence echoed elsewhere in the case. There were no photographs of Christmas morning, no videos from that holiday despite its importance. John Ramsey's company had just hit a $1 billion milestone. Patsy had been declared cancer-free, and the family had celebrated her 40th birthday. The missing images felt inconsistent with a household known for documenting everything. When the footage resurfaced, it helped explain a minor but long-debated clue, yet it also deepened the psychological portrait of the case. The Santa Bear mystery wasn't just about mislaid evidence. It was about how memory and denial operate under stress. When confronted with the photograph of the bear during questioning, Patsy said she didn't recognize it. In 1998, during a deposition with prosecutor Michael Caine, she was shown the same picture again. This time, she admitted that her daughter had received a bear at a pageant, but described it differently. White fur, angel wings, a banner. Her certainty shifted depending on the context, and that shifting became part of the public fascination. Some investigators saw her contradictions as signs of guilt. Others read them as symptoms of trauma. Psychologists familiar with grief noted that shock often fragments recollection. People in crisis may genuinely fail to recognize familiar objects, particularly those tied to painful memories. To Patsy, the bear may have symbolized her daughter's final appearance before death. Denying recognition could have been an unconscious act of self-protection rather than deception. But for detectives under pressure to solve a high-profile case, Every hesitation looked suspicious. The deposition transcript captured this tension in real time. Kane asked whether she recalled a public request from the Boulder Police Department for help identifying a Santa bear. She answered yes. Did she understand that it was the same bear she'd been shown in photos? Again, yes. And did she now recall where it came from? Number. Her responses were calm, clipped, almost detached. When told that a videotape existed showing the same bear at a December pageant, one where she was present, Patsy seemed momentarily surprised. "Oh, really?" she said. The prosecutor pressed further. Did that refresh her memory? Did she now recall that JonBenét had won such a prize? Patsy hesitated. "I thought it was a white angel bear," she said finally, "but maybe it was another time." In those few words lay the essence of the case's complexity. The Santa Bear incident revealed how small details, what kind of toy, what color, where it came from, could spiral into psychological battlegrounds. To the investigators, those details were forensic, a matter of timelines and physical evidence. To the Ramseys, they were emotional landmines tied to loss and blame. The truth might have been simple, but grief rarely is. Detective Jane Harmer, the investigator who located the original footage, later testified that the bear had been provided by the pageant organizer as a prize for Little Miss Christmas. The bears were purchased in bulk from a supplier in Nebraska. There was nothing unique or symbolic about them. But by the time this information surfaced, years had passed and the Santa Bear had already become embedded in the mythology of the case. Television specials, tabloid headlines, and message boards kept resurrecting it as a possible clue. It became part of a pattern, one of many small artifacts reinterpreted through the lens of suspicion. The recovered video also underscored the scale of misinformation that had accumulated around the investigation. Early police theories suggested that the bear might have contained a hidden compartment or a note from a mysterious admirer known as Santa Bill. Others speculated that it had been used to lure the child from her room. Each hypothesis added a layer of drama but moved further from the mundane truth. The bear had come from a stage full of identical prizes given out publicly in front of parents, organizers, and cameras. Yet the myth persisted because it filled the vacuum left by uncertainty. From a psychological standpoint, the Santa Bear story mirrored the broader dynamics of the case. The absence of clarity invited projection. Every missing photo, every forgotten detail became fertile ground for speculation. The bear was both a real object and a metaphor for the investigation itself. Ordinary in origin, extraordinary in interpretation. During the 2000 deposition, Prosecutor Kane revisited the subject. By then, the bear had been located, not in some hidden stash or evidence locker, but in the basement of the Ramsey's Atlanta home. It had been packed away with other belongings moved from Colorado after the family relocated. When asked how it got there, Patsy said she didn't know. She suggested that a retired police officer who assisted with their move might have boxed it up. Her tone remained neutral, but for investigators, the explanation carried irony. The object once considered proof of intrusion had never left the family's possession. The transcript also captured the strange choreography between memory and accountability. At one point, when pressed about the bear's discovery, Patsy's attorney intervened, asking whether she understood the question. She seemed uncertain. When reminded that she had personally examined the bear after it was found, she acknowledged doing so, but said it still didn't look familiar. To some observers, this was evasion. To others, it was grief in its most literal form, the mind refusing to reconnect a harmless toy with a night of horror. The Santa Bear episode eventually faded from headlines, eclipsed by new theories and suspects. But it remains an instructive case study in how perception can warp evidence. What began as a simple object, a stuffed animal won at a Christmas-themed pageant, became a national mystery because of timing, emotion, and the human need for meaning. In the absence of certainty, people constructed narratives that made sense to them. For law enforcement, it was a clue. For the public, a symbol. For a grieving mother, perhaps, an unbearable reminder. In retrospect, the bear's journey traced the outline of the entire case, misplaced footage, conflicting memories, and a truth buried beneath misunderstanding. When Detective Harmer identified it in the video, she closed one of the smallest but most persistent gaps in the timeline. The discovery didn't solve the murder, but it did illuminate something deeper. The ways in which ordinary details can become distorted under the weight of tragedy. Forensic analysts often say that evidence doesn't lie, but people do. Sometimes to others, sometimes to themselves. Yet in this case, it wasn't clear anyone had lied. It was possible that each participant spoke from their own fractured recollection, each version true within the boundaries of what they could bear to remember. The footage from December 15th, 1996, now digitized and circulating online, lasts only a few minutes. In it, the auditorium is small, the applause subdued. Parents clap politely as children smile under fluorescent lights. On stage, JonBenét accepts her medal, cradles the stuffed bear, and waves to the crowd. The moment is unremarkable in every way, except for what it would later come to represent. By the time detectives connected that image to the bear photographed on her bed, nearly 3 years had passed. The case had grown into one of the most analyzed investigations in American history. Yet within that enormity, the Santa Bear story endures as a symbol of how meaning mutates. A child's prize became a clue became a controversy, and a controversy became a mirror reflecting the entire tragedy. And somewhere in that transformation lies the quiet truth that still haunts the story. Not about guilt or innocence, but about how grief edits memory, how denial reshapes reality, and how sometimes the smallest objects hold the loudest echoes of what has been lost.
So after watching this footage and hearing that breakdown, I think what stands out the most isn't just the bear itself, it's what it represents. The Santa Bear became, kind of a symbol of how this entire investigation operated. You have so many contradictions. It's a lot of confusion, selective memory, right? So for years, you're looking at this one toy. It's a simple stuffed bear. It's being treated like it held the key to solving some sort of murder, right? But when you look at the facts, and when the facts started coming out, we found that the bear really, honestly and truly wasn't at all. It's really not all that mysterious, to be honest with you. It was a prize, right? Given at Christmas, at Christmas themed pageant, right? But I think what people looked at was the fact that it was 10 days before JonBenét's death, right? So the problem wasn't really the bear. The problem was the narrative, right? With everything, and to be honest, I get it. With everything happening, and you're looking for clues, right? We're still talking about this today. We're looking for every little thing to try to get to who did this, to actually solve this murder, right? And so what's fascinating is the psychology behind all of that. The human mind, I should say our minds, try to fill in the blanks when there really are no answers. And so in cases like this, like I was saying, the smallest objects start to carry emotional and a lot of times symbolic weight. And we look at investigators, we look at media, and even family members trying to maybe rather innocently project meaning onto some of these meaningless things, right? As far as the investigation goes, right? So the bear can become a scapegoat for what no one could explain. And when we start to step back and look at things, right, you can almost see kind of a split reality here, where on the one hand, a family is grieving and where they're performing, defending, managing optics, right? So we're grieving, and then also we're performing. We're trying to make sure that everything looks right, sounds right. We're trying to defend ourselves. So I get it, right? I think it's also striking how much of this case hinges, absolutely hinges on memory. Or I guess I could say the lack of the memory, right? So we have adults who can recall photo shoots and pageants, but somehow they can't recall the details surrounding the last time they saw a distinctive Santa-clad bear. Really? I feel like that raises questions not only about honesty, but about denial. And when talking about denial, we see that, it's just my opinion now, we see that from John and how they took interviews and what they've said in different interviews over the years, even till this day. And none of it is concrete, what I'm saying. It's just purely speculation. So I don't want anybody coming after me, right? But sometimes memory loss isn't deception. It's psychological survival. It's a traumatic experience that people are going through, right? So it's easier sometimes to forget than to confront what the truth might suggest in these situations. Okay. And then there's the investigative lesson, right? So for almost 3 years, you've got police and the public chasing the idea of an intruder clue, when in reality, the evidence kind of, sort of, actually maybe pointed inward. So we're looking at everything here and there and everywhere, and we have a wild goose chase, when actually we're looking at the evidence. It's pointing to, and once again, allegedly, maybe an inside job, right? It's a pattern you see in many high-profile cases. The search for something extraordinary when the answer is, well, it's painfully ordinary. It's something that's, oh, how come I didn't see that? Oh, wow, this was hidden underneath here, and really, honestly and truly, this whole time it was out in the open. That a lot of times is hard for people to accept. Okay, so the Santa bear, in my opinion, in the end, I don't know if it solved the crime, but I do think that in some ways it exposed how easily we can lose sight of logic in the hunt for justice. When the story broke, it was huge. It was, how could anybody ever do this? How can anybody ever think to do this? What monster? And so people are searching desperately for answers. Like I said, grasping for some things, right? And so doing this, grasping onto these little things, I think it revealed the cracks in everyone's story, and maybe even in the system itself. So I don't know. Something to think about in trying to understand this case more, not just from the facts and evidence, but sort of introducing a psychological element and method to it as to why this new footage means something, or maybe in some people's opinion, it doesn't mean anything. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below.